I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the Beis Hamikdash, and there are a couple of elements in particular. Right now, if you want to follow, we're learning Hilchos Beis Bechira, Perek Aleph, the first chapter, Halacha Vav. The Rambam writes, "V'osim b'mikdash shiva kelim." He's saying the Beis Hamikdash had 7 furnishings in it, right? 7 vessels. So what are they? So we're familiar with them. Mizbeach la'ola, the altar, which was an outdoor altar. L'shar karbanos, it was where the regular sacrifices were burnt. The kevesh she'olin bo lemizbeach, and a ramp with which a person walked up to get to the top of the altar. The altar was very high structure. The Rambam will explain later that the Beis Hamikdash's altar, the Mizbeach, was 10 amos tall. 10 amos is somewhere between 15 and 20 feet. So from ground level to get all the way to the top, imagine 15 to 20 feet up, you needed to get up there. The Torah says you're not allowed to use stairs to walk up to the altar. So the alternative, since they didn't have elevators, was to have a ramp, which was a smooth structure going up. Imagine creating like a triangle, like a right triangle, if you will, and the Kohanim would walk up that to get to the top of the altar. And that's in Hebrew. That ramp is called a kevesh. This altar, and along with its ramp, was in front of the ulam, in front of the hall entering the Beis Hamikdash, partially to the south. So if you will, not quite in front, but in front of the sanctuary of the temple, to the left. That's the south. The kior v'kano. The kior was the basin, the sink basically, which they filled with water. Kano was the base, what I called here in the title of this, the saucer of the basin. Lekadish mimena kohanim yedem v'ragleim lavoda. And this is what was used for the Kohanim to wash their hands before doing the service in the Beis Hamikdash. The placement of this washing station, along with the bowl or the saucer underneath, was between the altar and the heichal and the sanctuary, which I hope to devote some time to, if not now, then in another class. There's a very unusual placement, and think about it for a moment. If I were to tell you that, let's say, in the shul, that there's a washing station. So our washing station, if you can picture our sanctuary at Heights Jewish Center, the washing station is placed before you enter the shul, the sanctuary. There's a sink, and there are cups over there, paper towels. So you go there before you actually go into the shul. Kohanim had to wash their hands before going onto the Mizbeach, before walking up the altar. Yet the sink was placed beyond it. It would be like telling someone, if you can picture our shul for a moment, if you were to tell someone, listen, you have to wash Netilas Yadayim before you walk up to the bima. But where's the Netilas Yadayim? The Netilas Yadayim station is next to the Aron. You're like, next to the Aron? So you're telling me in order to walk to the bima and to walk up to the bima to do what I have to do there, I have to walk past the bima and in front of on the dais, for example, in front of the Aron, wash my hands there. That's a little counterintuitive. I think we can all appreciate that. Hello, Warren. Hello, Sam. So continuing over here, we have the Mizbeach, the altar. We have the kevesh, which is the ramp. We have the kior, which is the washing station. Kano, we have the saucer for the washing station, from which the Kohanim wash their hands. And Mashal Darm Shehu Small Hanichnas Hamikdash, which is again placed on the south in front of the sanctuary. And then the last 3 items are Mizbeach Lektaras, the golden altar where incense was brought in the Beis Hamikdash, Umenorah, the 7-branch menorah, V'shulchan, and the bread table where the 12 loaves of bread were placed, and the Kohanim ate from those loaves of bread every Shabbos. These 3 furnishings are actually inside the Kodesh. They're inside the sanctuary, the building. Lifnei Kodesh HaKodashim, right in front of the Holy of Holies. So I have been interested in two items for a very long time that are perplexing to me. One is the kevesh. The kevesh is the ramp, and the other one is what's called kan, the kan, chaf nun. We think of the word chaf nun in modern Hebrew, that's the word kain, like the modern Hebrew word for yes. However, the word kan in Hebrew means the base of something. So what's interesting about this, and Reb Chaim Kanievsky says this in his Perush, is that even though the kan doesn't really seem to serve a purpose, meaning it's somewhat of a utilitarian purpose. Imagine, you're washing your hands. So where's the water supposed to go when you wash your hands? It's supposed to go on the floor? It's not so nice to wash your hands directly on the floor. So I don't know if any of you have ever been, it's something that I find a little distasteful, but it's a very common thing in many Hasidic shtibels. If you're ever in a Hasidic shtibel for Shal Shudas, for example, and they pass around the Mayim Achronim after Shal Shudas, at the end of Shal Shudas, before benching, sometimes you'll notice they'll take the cup, and some people quietly will pour the water from the little Mayim Achronim cup onto the floor, directly onto the floor. Meaning they don't want to put it actually in the bowl. Instead, they pour the water onto the floor. So one would imagine that, that's distasteful to actually have the water of the Kohanim washing their hands and feet go directly on the floor. So if they have a base, so imagine like a large samovar, which is what the kior looked like, and then you had this big, large saucer underneath, and the water went into the saucer so that it wouldn't actually get onto the floor and the ground of the chotzer, of the azara, the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. Maybe that's the purpose. But that's rather technical, right? Meaning it doesn't actually do anything. That's one thing. The second thing is the kevesh, this ramp. Think about it for a moment. Why is this ramp so important? The Torah never actually mentions a ramp. The Torah only implies that a ramp is necessary because it talks about the altar, even though the Chumash describes the altar as being 3 amos tall, which is about 6 feet, and a person could technically put something onto the altar to burn if it was only 6 feet tall by raising their hands up and putting it on. However, the opinion that the Rambam holds of, which is an opinion mentioned in the Gemara, is that the altar, even in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu in the Mishkan, was 10 amos tall. So if you have the Mizbech, it's 10 amos, between 15 and 20 feet off the ground, and you're not allowed to use steps, then you have to get up there somehow. So how are you going to get up there? So create some other mechanism. So I said jokingly that other mechanism can be an elevator, but if they don't have the technology for an elevator, so they came up with the idea of a ramp. But the ramp, again, is a technicality. Nobody's tall enough to get onto the altar. You have to get up there. The Torah says at the end of Parshas Yisro that you're not allowed to use stairs. So what do? So you build a ramp that goes smooth up. But is it so important that it has to be listed the way the Rambam listed? The Rambam loved math. The Rambam loved numbers. You'll find you go through the Rambam all throughout Mishnah Torah. When he talks about halachos, he says there are 10 of this, there are 4 of that, there are 11 of these. He likes organizing his thoughts as far as halacha goes into numbers. So here he got to the famous number 7, and he said there are 7 furnishings in the Mishkan. However, those 7 furnishings include the kevesh, the ramp, which isn't actually something that is used for Avodas Hashem, but it's listed, and the kan for the kior, the basin, meaning the saucer on which the kior, the washing station goes. So that's why I named this shir right now ramps and saucers, because the other items that are there, we all understand. You learn Chumash, you learn the basics of the Mishkan, of the Beis Hamikdash, you understand that those things are necessary. You have the altars, you have the menorah, you have the bread table, you even if you want to include the washing station, of course. But the saucer, the ramp, why do we mention those? So there's my question. So for this, I would like to share with you, let's see, which one do I start with? Well, I started the title of the class with the word ramp, so I'll do that one first. The Rambam also lists kevesh, the ramp, first. Lubavitcher Rebbe, in a mimer, they said sometime in the, I don't know, I learned it around Pesach time, and right now it escapes me when it was said. I looked it up. It was either 1953 or 1963, 64. He had a very brief thought, but one that I thought was very deep. I don't know why you can't hear me. If I hear somebody says they can't hear me, if somebody else could let me know if you can hear me on Facebook, I would appreciate it. So he shares the following thought. Okay, I'm back on. If you look at any of the plans of the Beis HaMikdash, meaning Shlomo's Beis HaMikdash, or the ones that stood in Yerushalayim, you'll realize that there are many places where there were stairs. In fact, if you've ever heard of the term, I'm sure everyone has heard of the term, Shir Hamalos. Shir Hamalos means the song that was sung on the steps leading up to the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. There were 15 steps, and that's why there are 15 Shir Hamaloses, one for each step. However, that was an architectural detail of the Beis HaMikdash. Meaning the Beis HaMikdash does not demand steps. The only time the steps are mentioned with regard to the Beis HaMikdash is that there should not be steps leading up to the altar. So that even the Beis HaMikdash that had steps in other locations, all getting up to from Har HaBayis and leading up to the Beis HaMikdash, yet there were no steps to the altar. That was a ramp. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, what's the difference between steps and a ramp? The difference is the difference between levels, meaning when you go on steps, you have to step off one step and you go to another one. And then when you are on the higher step, you're higher than the person who is on the lower step. You are on a higher level. However, if you are on a ramp, so something very interesting is happening. A ramp, by definition, it goes up, so you have someone who's at the top of the ramp and someone who's at the very bottom of the ramp. This person could be 20 feet higher than the person at the bottom. And yet, from another perspective, another way of looking at it, they're actually on the same level. And if you think about it, if you've ever gone driving in the mountains, you will realize that even though sometimes when you drive, my earliest childhood memories, I don't remember any of the details of it, except, I'm sorry if you're on Facebook and you cannot see me there, or on YouTube. I remember being in San Francisco. And one of the visual images I have of San Francisco is that the road was very steep. It was constant. It was like the car was going up and then it was going down, and then it was going up and then it was going down. And that's the image that I have. So a road has to be very steep to be aware of that. Someone's on the top, someone's on the bottom. The person who's on the top thinks, oh, I'm much higher than you. But anything less than that kind of extreme angle, you can have people who are considerably higher than anyone else, and yet what is the image? The image, even though the person is higher, the reality of it is that the person standing at the bottom of the ramp and the person standing at the top of the ramp, if it's a smooth ramp, the awareness is one of saying, you know what? We are on the same level. Yes, sometimes Jews think, and we can't help it. If you think about it, it's natural. If we're going to have a hierarchy of mitzvos, and few mitzvos, many mitzvos, all the mitzvos, somebody who only does one mitzvah, somebody who does two mitzvos, someone who does 613 mitzvos, then what you end up having is a hierarchy. But what the Mizbeach is saying, the Mizbeach is the symbol of serving Hashem. Somebody goes onto the top of the altar and is up there, serving Hashem, a real Eved Hashem, like the Kohanim were, but to go up there, they had to go on a ramp. And what is the meaning of being on a ramp? The meaning of being on a ramp is that even if you're all the way at the top and someone else is all the way at the bottom, yet there is an inherent equality that all Jews have, regardless of the level that they're at. Yes, this one is higher, and this one is lower, but they are all equal, gleich. They're all on the same level. That's the idea that we're supposed to think of when davening. So that, and when doing mitzvahs all together. So that you have, for example, a person is davening and he's using the image of Sulam Mutzav Arsa Rosh Magia Shemaima, that davening is like a ladder. And ladders, of course, have rungs. You go on one rung, you go on the next. You start with the brachos in the morning, then you say karbanos, then you say birchos hashachar, then you say birchos kriyashman shma, and then you get up to Shemon Esrei. So you have all those levels. However, what you're supposed to appreciate when you get all the way to the top is that, yes, you're at the top of a series of levels, but still, as far as Hashem is concerned, it's all the same. Bottom and top HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything is equalized. Kachashecha ka'ora. And this is certainly the perspective that Jews should have vis-a-vis other Jews as well. The idea of understanding, for example, the example that I remember giving in Shul several months ago was that if you have two people and they're wearing a watch, they're wearing watches. They're both wearing, each is wearing a Rolex that costs $20,000. With all of the jewels and they're real. You didn't buy them in New York City for $10. Real $20,000 watches. So the only thing is, one person's watch doesn't work, and the other person's watch does work. Now, the person whose watch doesn't work. What's wrong with his watch? Is it broken? No, it's not broken. Somebody just has to go pop the inside, blow a little dust out of the cogs, and it will work fine. It is not broken at all. Same thing, there are watches, for example, there's a kind of watch called an Omega, which works based on the movement of the person's arm. So that it could be if you leave the watch sitting there, the watch doesn't work. Someone says, it doesn't work, it's garbage, throw it in the garbage. No, don't throw it in the garbage. That watch is worth thousands of dollars. The only thing is, you need to move your arm around. You need to move around to get the watch to work. That is the value that a Jew has. A Jew might not be doing mitzvos, but like the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, that Ashrei Yisrael, happy, fortunate are Jews who are called HaKadosh Baruch Hu's children. So they're HaKadosh Baruch Hu's children whether they realize it or not, whether they do mitzvos or not. There is that inherent equality of value that all children have, and vis-a-vis the God of Israel, Hashem Elokei Yisrael, that is the value of every single Yisrael, just like every single human being has a certain inherent value by virtue of being a human being created b'Tselem Elokim. So that's the idea of a ramp. And I think this is why, on a deeper level, maybe not on a halachic language, but on a deeper level, why the kevesh, why the ramp, is considered an inherent component, an inherent furnishing for the piece of furniture for the Beis HaMikdash. That's one. Now we'll go to the kan, the saucer. The saucer is a stand, right? You put something on a stand. So think about this for a moment. And this is, again, a very painful thing that I'm going to mention now, but it's true. What is this saucer, the kan, what does it stand for? What does it represent? So I think what it represents, if you think about it for a moment, what does the sink, the kior, represent in the Beis HaMikdash? It's a sink. It's not an inherent part of the avoda. However, if you look it up in Parshas Kisisa, the sink is an inherent part of the avoda, and the the pasuk says that a kohen who does the avoda and does not wash his hands is chayv misa b'dei shemayim. Hashem reserves the right to take his life. And not only that, the halacha, I believe, is that if a kohen does the avoda without washing his hands, that the avoda is pasul. It doesn't even count. Yet, what is the washing itself? The washing is only a hachana. I discussed this the other night. What does hachana mean? Hachana means preparation. I spoke about the ulam as being the preparatory stage, like the lobby before entering the building of the Beis HaMikdash. And in the lobby, the ulam has its own kedusha. Same thing with the kior. The kior is not an avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. A kohen doesn't go in and say, I want to do the service of Hashem of washing my hands, and then walk out. Washing the hands in the Beis HaMikdash is preparatory to doing other things. In fact, nowadays, where a Jew washes his hands in the Netilas Yadayim in the morning, washing, right, 3 times alternately each hand, that's an avodah, and you make the bracha on the Netilas Yadayim. Because, according to one Rishon, every Jew in his own life is like a Kohen before serving Hashem throughout the day. But the kior is only preparatory. So if the kior is preparatory, then what's the kan? What's the basin? It's there to serve something which is preparatory. So it does even less. It doesn't even serve. The Kohanim aren't meant to put their hands in the basin, maybe over the saucer, They're not on the saucer. They're not meant to mix their hands in the water in the saucer. The water pours out of the sink and it goes on their hands and feet, one hand on each foot, and then they turn the spigot on, and then that's how they wash their hands and feet. That's how it was done in the Beis Hamikdash. So this teaches, again, the value, very similar to the lesson from the other night, very similar to the idea of the ulam, of the entrance hall. And this, again, focuses the same idea I said the other night, but with a different emphasis on how important it is to prepare for Avodas Hashem. There's a story that they tell. I don't have a source for it. It's a story that I remember hearing, I remember reading, but I don't have a source for you right now. That Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev was, whose grave was just found, his exact location was just found recently. Jewish cemetery, some areas of the Jewish cemetery were uncovered in Berdichev. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, they say that about his davening, that he davened with great intensity, and with a gentle, deep kavana until he got to Shmona Esrei. But his actual Shmona Esrei was very, very fast. And some people asked him why, and he gave some sort of explanation. But the idea that he shared with them was that once he was actually in davening Shmona Esrei, then that is the equivalent, like some Sfarim describe, of the Kohen Gadol being in the Kodesh Kodashim, meaning you're all the way at the top. You're as deep as you can be. But what's really important are the stages leading up to it. When I was learning in Yerushalayim, in the Mir Yeshiva, sometimes on Shabbos I would go to the shul of the Karlin Stolen Chassidim. And these Karliner Chassidim on Shabbos had a very interesting approach to davening, which is that their Psukei de Zimra was loud and intense and powerful, and everyone almost yelled. They didn't scream it, but they said it very loud with great concentration. And yet, when it came to Shmona Esrei, like everyone else in Klal Yisrael, the Shmona Esrei was silent and also not remarkably fast either. This just emphasized the idea that for a human being who, right, we live in this world, it's all about the process. And the earlier in the process you do something, and you do the preparation with great intensity. So the preparation of walking up the kevish, walking up the ramp, before you even get to the altar, is emphasizing a Jew understands the basic idea of the inherent equality that all Bnei Yisrael have, regardless of level. And then, washing their hands beforehand, they realize that, look, this basin, this saucer for the sink is so important because it's serving just as the good placement where to put the sink. So for this, we realize how important the Jews who provide that kind of material assistance and the assistance that they provide, how important it is, how important that service is. It might not be the service that other things have. So, for example, a Jew donated gold to the Mishkan. Where did that gold go? So imagine if a Jew had a chunk of gold or a gold bar, and he said to Moshe, here, I'm donating this for the building of the Mishkan. Like there's a famous story of the Chaim Volozhin. So where did that gold go? For some, the gold might have gone and actually been part of the lid or part of the Aron Kodesh, the holy ark that contained the Ten Commandments. For other people, the gold could have been on one of the platings for one of the beams in the Mishkan. Or it could have been something else, some other part. So I would imagine that I would think, I hope my piece of gold actually goes and is used to be one of the kruvim on top of the Aron. And that, of course, would be very special. But what about the Jew who can do something else? He's not shaykh to that. He's not on that kind of high level that he's zocha to be there in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But if he can do something for the preparatory levels, then that's something which, in a sense, can be more precious than everything else, that has an equal standing, whether it's at the bottom of the ramp or the top of the ramp, to consider how precious that is. And Jews, and rabbis for that matter, who have understood this idea and understand the preciousness of what every person, every Jew has to contribute, they make a donation. What does the donation go to? Some people like it. Or we have a sink outside of our sanctuary that I mentioned earlier, donated by Alex Edelman. It's a very special thing. And say, well, there are other people who donated the bima, there are other people who donated the aron, but if you can donate those preparatory things, like the doors that lead into something, then that is a very, very precious thing too. That's the significance of the ramp, and that is the significance of the saucer. All right, so I hope this can give us some sort of appreciation for the preciousness of every Jew and increase our own Avos Yisrael, which is, of course, one of the elements of Avoda that's so important during the 3 weeks, because in order to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, as I mentioned in the first class, the Jewish people have to be politically united. And in order to be politically united, that will only happen if we all feel that inherent unity as well. And that inherent unity can only come with the Avos Yisrael, V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, and that Avos Yisrael can only come when we contemplate how precious every single Jew is, whether they're at the top of the ramp or the bottom of the ramp, or whether their role in the Jewish people is only to serve as the saucer for the sink for the Kohanim before they do their higher avodah. Okay, everybody, I'll stop there for now. I want to wish you all a good day, a good night, whenever you happen to be listening to this. God bless you all, and I hope to speak with you very soon. Take care, bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody on YouTube.